My name is Hannah. I am 31 years old. I live in a small town called Brighton Hill. I am married to a man named Mark. He is 37 years old. We have been married for 7 years. We also have a baby daughter. Her name is Ella. She is 9 months old. Ella is the light of our life. Mark is a kind husband. He works as an engineer in a building company. Every day he comes home around 6 in the evening. When he enters the house, Ella smiles and reaches her small hands toward him. Mark always picks her up and spins her gently in the air. After that, he helps me cook dinner. Sometimes he washes the dishes while I feed the baby. Our life was simple, but I believed it was perfect. I trusted my husband completely. At least, that is what I believed before everything started to change. About 3 months ago, Mark told me something that surprised me. One evening after dinner, he sat next to me and said, "Hannah, I found some extra work. I will work at night sometimes." I looked at him with confusion. "Why do you need another job?" I asked. "We are not struggling." Mark smiled and touched Ella's head. "I just want to save more money for her future," he said. I asked where he would work, but he did not give a clear answer. "Just some evening work," he said. "Do not worry." That night he left the house at 9 o'clock. The house suddenly felt very quiet. I sat on the sofa holding Ella and watching the door. Mark came back after midnight. The next night the same thing happened. Soon it became normal. Every evening at 9 Mark left the house and returned very late. At first I did not question it, but slowly I began to notice small things that made my heart uneasy. One morning while doing laundry, I picked up Mark's jacket and smelled something strange. It was perfume, soft and sweet. I do not use perfume anymore because Ella is sensitive to strong smells. The scent was not mine. My heart began to beat faster. A few days later, I found a restaurant receipt in his coat pocket. It was from a fancy restaurant downtown. The bill was for 2 meals and it was expensive. My hands started shaking. Why would my husband have dinner with someone else? I tried to calm myself. Maybe he went with coworkers, I thought. But my doubts did not disappear. I began to watch Mark more closely. I noticed he spent more time on his phone. Sometimes he smiled while reading messages. When I walked into the room, he quickly locked the screen. One night, his phone vibrated while he was in the bathroom. I looked down at the screen and saw a message from someone saved as L. The message said, "Thank you for coming tonight." My chest felt tight and painful. I wanted to believe it meant nothing, but the fear in my heart was growing. A week later, I noticed something else. Mark bought flowers from a small shop near our street. I saw them in the car when he returned from work. But when he entered the house, he brought nothing inside. My friend Emily came to visit me that afternoon. She looked at my tired eyes and asked, "Hannah, what is wrong?" I told her everything about the perfume, the messages, the receipt and the flowers. Emily listened carefully and then said quietly, "Maybe he is hiding something." I shook my head. "Mark would never betray me," I said, but deep inside I was not sure anymore. That night I made a decision. I would follow him. At 9 o'clock Mark left the house as usual. I waited 5 minutes and then quietly drove after him. My heart was beating loudly as I followed his car through the streets. After about 20 minutes, Mark stopped in a quiet neighborhood I had never visited before. He parked his car near a small white house with a blue door. Then he walked to the door and knocked. Someone opened it and Mark stepped inside. I sat in my car staring at that blue door. My husband had just entered another house late at night. My hands were shaking. I felt like my whole world was falling apart. I waited almost 2 hours, but Mark did not come out. Finally, I drove home with tears in my eyes. The next day, I searched the phone number connected to the letter L on the internet. I found a man named Leonard Gray. He looked old, maybe around 70 years old, with pale skin and tired eyes. I could not understand why Mark would visit him every night. That evening, when Mark returned home, I could not stay silent anymore. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Where do you go every night?" Mark looked surprised. "What do you mean?" he asked. I felt anger and fear at the same time. "I followed you yesterday," I said. "I saw the house with the blue door." "Who is Leonard?" Mark's face suddenly lost its color. He sat down slowly and looked at the floor. After a long moment he spoke. "Hannah, Leonard is your father." My heart stopped. My father? I had not spoken to him for 9 years. We had a terrible argument when I was young, and after that we never talked again. I never invited him to our wedding. I never told him when Ella was born. Mark continued speaking quietly. 3 months ago your father contacted me. He is very sick. The doctors say he has cancer and not much time left. He wanted to see you, but he was afraid you would reject him again. So he asked me to visit him and tell him about your life. Tears filled my eyes. "You have been visiting him every night?" I whispered. Mark nodded. "Yes. I show him pictures of Ella. I tell him stories about you. The perfume smell is from the nurse who cares for him. The restaurant food was takeout because he cannot leave the house. The flowers were for his room." Mark then opened a video on his phone. On the screen I saw my father lying in a bed. He looked weak and thin. His voice was soft. "Hannah, my daughter, I know I hurt you long ago. I am sorry. I hope you can forgive me one day." I began to cry. I felt ashamed for doubting my husband. "I thought you were cheating," I whispered. Mark hugged me gently. "Never," he said. "I only wanted to give you a chance to see him again." The next day we drove together to the house with the blue door. When I entered the room, my father looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Hannah," he said softly. I walked to him and held his hand. We talked for hours about the past and forgave each other. A few days later I brought Ella to meet him. He held her carefully and smiled with joy. "She is beautiful," he said. 2 months later my father passed away peacefully. But before he left this world, we had time to say goodbye. At his funeral I held Mark's hand tightly. "Thank you," I told him. In that moment I understood something important. Real love is not always loud. Sometimes real love is quiet and patient. Sometimes the person who loves you most is secretly doing something kind for you. My husband's secret was not betrayal. It was love.